Welcome to Go and Do. I'm your host, Ajalon Joy Stapley, and today we have guests. Here at Go and Do, we talk about politics, culture, family, and faith, and how they all connect from a pro-America, faith-affirming, profit-sustaining member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints perspective. And today we have a special treat for you. Very excited about this. Today is a faith episode, and I have invited on two amazing women to discuss the Family Proclamation together. But before we get into that, I want to touch on some politics real quick. And when I say politics, really this topic spans the entire spectrum. So faith, family, culture, and politics. This topic covers all of that. I did a 4-part series on how wokeism is Marxism. I strongly encourage you to check that out if you want to understand what is happening in our world right now. I dig quite deep into it, starting at Karl Marx, going all the way to 2025. And in the part 4 of that series, I discussed how Marxism came to America through the universities. And then we broke down several Marxist theories: DEI, critical race theory, sexual theory, gender theory, and it all kind of culminated with queer theory, which, as I laid out the evidence, proved that queer theory is not gay theory. Queer theory is really just opening the door for all sorts of sexual fun and fantasies, primarily pedophilia. Yes, I laid out several pieces of evidence for this, including some posts I found on X. These are the posts. Ready? And if you're just listening, there is a variation of rainbow flags that says, think before you speak hate. Someone you know is gay, someone you know is bi, someone you know is transgender, and someone you know is MAP. And in case you haven't heard, MAP is the politically correct term for people who are sexually attracted to children, okay, for pedophiles. So that wasn't it. There was another one. It said, someone you know is gay, someone you know is transgender, and someone you know is zoo. Zoo. Exactly what you imagine zoo to be. Okay. So as I said in that episode, I did some research into this account to see if I could trace it back to a real person. I didn't come up with much, but that person did in fact find me. Yes. He found me on Facebook, and I'm assuming it's a he. Probably, a little unkempt, a little larger, hibernating in a basement that he does not own. He found me, and he thanked me for the free advertising. Now, why am I telling you this? I'm telling you this because I want to point out something I saw on his bio. Ready? So it goes by the name of Marvin Merchants. And yes, you can see that right there. Let me show you another picture. Those are Care Bears. Care Bears. This person has Care Bears in his wallpaper bio image. Okay, so there's his page, his Facebook page. And then this is a pinned post. Ready? It says, introduction. I'm Consuela, late 30. I'm gender fluid, trans age, bisexual, and MAP. Trans age and MAP. I'm also anti-fascist and left-wing alternative attitude, blah, 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 blah. Okay, how many of you years ago when you saw that transgenderism became a thing and that people were saying that you can change your gender just depending on how you identify, that gender is fluid, how many of you had common sense and the presence of the Holy Ghost to tell you that, hey, if you can switch your gender, what is stopping you or someone from switching their age, from identifying as a different age? And your mind automatically went to the can of worms that was going to open. Raise your hand if you were one of those people, okay? Yes, the right has been warning about this for a long time. And we're starting to see it come to fruition, okay? Trans age, a MAP, minor attracted person. Guys, this is the newest color addition to the rainbow flag. If you haven't paid attention, this is the ultimate goal. Okay, so why am I sharing this disturbing piece of information right before I show you this beautiful video of this discussion that I had, the spiritual discussion I had about the Family Proclamation with these two women? Because of this. Let me read to you a statement in the second to last paragraph of the proclamation. It says, quote, "We warn that the disintegration of the family will bring upon individuals, communities, and nations the calamities foretold by ancient and modern prophets." We are living that right now. Okay, we have endless examples in the scriptures, in the Bible, the Old Testament, and the Book of Mormon about how civilizations, when they do not follow God's laws, eventually just descend into chaos and instability and doing things that are so grotesque and evil and wicked. We're there. We are there, guys. This is the newest push from the left to normalize. And it's not an exaggeration. And if you haven't noticed, things that seem to be extreme and on the fringe will eventually become mainstream. I laid out several pieces of evidence. This was just one at the end of episode 4 or episode 5. And it's real. He's right there. He's not ashamed of it. He said, "Thanks for the advertisement." Trans age, math. Okay, right there. So we will get into the details of that at later episodes. But for now, let's get into the panel discussion that we had about the Family Proclamation. I hope you enjoy. I am thrilled today to bring to you this special faith episode where I have invited two women on who I have met through the wonderful, wild, sometimes wholesome and uplifting, oftentimes volatile world that is LDSX or LDS Twitter. And I'll let them introduce themselves in a minute. I asked them to come on to discuss the proclamation of the family. I noticed that they were staunch defenders of the restored gospel as well as the proclamation. And in honor of that document, just celebrating its 30th anniversary, I invited and they graciously accepted to come on and to discuss that document and why we, as women of the church, sustain it. So, without further ado, Megan.
Hi, I'm Megan. I run the account in Defense of the Family. I'm on Instagram and I'm on X. Um, I'm a stay-at-home mom. I've been a stay-at-home mom for almost 25 years. I have 4 kids, 3 boys, and a girl at the end. Our oldest is married. We have the best daughter-in-law. We did win the daughter-in-law lottery, so I hope to keep winning in that department. But our oldest is married. We have one at BYU, went on a mission in Brazil, and our youngest is a junior in high school. But this being online has been a great way to keep my brain engaged and to keep busy as a stay-at-home mom as my kids are leaving the nest now.
Yeah, awesome. Awesome. It's a new chapter in life.
Yep.
Michaela.
Hi. So I'm Michaela. I go by Faith Like Abish 2 on X, and I also just started recently using TikTok. I'm also Faith Like Abish on TikTok. I'm going to be doing a new reading the Book of Mormon within a week thing where I share my experiences and new impressions and testimonies that I get. And I'm going to share that on X and TikTok.
Awesome.
I am a stay-at-home mom of 2. My children are ages 3 and 4. I had them 10 months apart. They're both girls, so that's really fun. It's been a huge experience and trial. My husband is in the Army National Guard. He was gone at AIT for several months, and we just finally got him home, so that's been great. And I am a convert to the church. I joined at age 23, and I grew up in a non-religious home.
Okay, awesome. Good to have you guys. And I'm AJ Stapley. I am a stay-at-home mom as well. I have 3 kids, ages 7, 8, and 10. My husband was active duty military for our entire marriage, and he just recently retired. And I'm the creator and host of the Go and Do podcast and the Go and Do blog. You can watch episodes on YouTube or you can listen to episodes anywhere you get your podcasts. So excited to have these ladies here today. Let's just jump right into it. So, Megan, you're going to go first. Question is, why do you choose to sustain the Family Proclamation?
The short answer, because it's true and it works. But I was raised in the church. My whole family is still in the church. My husband was raised in the church. His side of the family is in the church. It was a very typical LDS upbringing. And I remember when the Family Proclamation first came out, and it seemed so basic. It seemed redundant, unnecessary, even. And I remember thinking as a senior in high school, well, duh, everybody knows this. Why is it so important? Everybody knows
Mhm.
this. And I think
Mhm.
now, 30 years later, as we've just hit the 30-year mark for the proclamation, I think we can definitely see how prophetic it is. And um, it's just amazing to observe society and a bunch of different things, how things are going in our society, um, the amount of contention and division and the breakdown of so many things. And I think so much of that goes back to the family. And we're forgetting and we're losing that foundation in many ways. And that is why I think it's important because I can see it. It has been something that, as a member of the church my whole life, I can see that this was prophecy for my lifetime. I mean, you watch it play out, and um, I support it because I feel like I can see what the world is like with and without it.
So when you decided to start your page in Defense of Family, why did you choose to name it that and cover the topics that you covered? Of all the things you could, I'm sure you're very talented in many different areas. So why, and there's a lot of things that are not as controversial as that. So what motivated you to do that, go that route?
Um, I've never shied away from controversy that much. Just ask my family.
Awesome.
Um, I'm probably a little bit of a pot stirrer in my family. But I actually planned and hosted and organized a mother's retreat at Southern Virginia University for 4 years in a
Okay.
row. And it was sort of like a little mini BYU Education Week where we would fly in presenters and speakers, and it was just for women,
Awesome.
for mothers specifically. And that was such a wonderful experience. And I got to know some really great people. And then 2020 hit, and we kept postponing. I had everything in place. I had asked all the presenters, everything was organized, but we just kept postponing, postponing, postponing. And eventually it got to a place where I just didn't feel good about it anymore. So when I was talking to the woman at the university that I was coordinating with, I just said, I feel like we need to put a pause on it. And she said she felt the same way. So um, then I was sick with COVID and I was sitting in bed and thinking about all these things and realizing that this conference, this thing that I had found so much fulfillment in, felt like something I was supposed to do was now over. And I had this energy and this drive and this desire to, to still continue something like that. And so while I was sitting in bed, I was just thinking of different names for Instagram accounts or something, and everything was to do with motherhood and women, and just nothing seemed right. The handles were taken, the websites were taken, just
Yeah.
anything
Yeah.
just didn't feel right. And all of a sudden, I just felt a prompting that I needed to include the whole family, that it
Mhm.
wasn't that I needed to speak up not just for mothers,
Mhm.
but for the whole family. And it's like the name just dropped into my mind and it just felt right. That was it. And so I created my Instagram account right there. And um, I had about 30 followers for a long time.
Yeah. 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 Feel ya.
But it slowly grew. And I had a friend one time in the beginning. I was like, I don't know why I'm doing this. I feel like I'm supposed to do this. I don't know why I don't have that many followers. I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing, except, you know, I felt that confirmation. And she said, if your kids are the only ones who ever see what you post, you've done something great. And that's just kind of the attitude I went about it with. You know what? I'm doing this for my kids or whatever, one person, if it affects one person. And eventually it did start to grow. But
I love it. I love it. And not just for your kids, but also it's like a sign. I think it was President Nelson that talked a lot about how the Sabbath was a sign of our devotion to God, right? And so if anything, that page is a sign to the Lord of your devotion, right? That you are trying and you are proclaiming his truths and defending his principles. And it's regardless of the success, which you've grown to be quite successful at it, but regardless of that, you've done it and you can stand proud knowing that you are doing something that you felt prompted to do and you're defending God's truth. Love it. Absolutely
it's,
love it.
it's a principle to me. I feel like principles are important to me. And if there's a principle that I feel strongly about, I'm gonna stick with it. And the family is one of those things that, I'm sticking with
Yeah.
it.
Yes. Yes. Anything else as to why the family, right? I know you felt prompted not to do just womanhood, but why the family? Are there things that you've seen in the world specifically right now or in culture that have helped you to realize that that needs to be defended?
Absolutely. And I think a big part of it is going back to the mother's retreat that I did after it all kind of fell through. I found out that one of the presenters left the church. Another one of the presenters I didn't know previously turned out to be quite the feminist, very much pronoun, all the stuff that is just um, part of the group within the church. I was realizing at the time that there's a group within the church that didn't really appreciate the family proclamation, that didn't see it as truth, that didn't see it as doctrine. And that, I think in 2020, that was kind of a newsflash for me.
Yeah.
And so when I realized that it wasn't just the attitudes in the world, but it was also the attitudes of many within the church, I really wanted to stand for something. And I wanted to be a place where people could go to for truth and goodness and light, despite all of the messages to the contrary in and out of the church.
Love it. I love it. It's inspiring. Thank you so much. Michaela, why do you choose to sustain the family proclamation?
Oh, it is such a big question. And now my neighbor is mowing his yard, so I hope that's
You can't
not.
hear it. I
Okay,
can't hear
good.
it.
Okay. Um, yeah, that's such a good question. So I was not raised a member of the church. I wasn't raised religious at all. I'm just going to give some background there. So my parents divorced at a young age. My mom had me at age 16. My dad was an adult. And my mom had experienced a lot of trauma in her life. And that sort of thing has the tendency to bleed over into the home. So I had a traumatic upbringing. We'll just leave it at that. It was very difficult. I got married to my high school boyfriend, and I got married basically right away as soon as I turned 19 or 20 years old. And so I had grown up in a home where the traditional family definitely was not taught. And after I had joined the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints at age 23, I had divorced my first husband shortly after. And I almost immediately met my now husband 7 days after moving to Utah. And that was one of the first things we had discussed was the things that we had expected for our families and what we wanted our life to look like if we had chose to pursue marriage. And I wanted to be a stay-at-home mother. I had received impression or strong feelings that that is the best way that I could serve my God and my family was to raise children and to be a matriarch and a strong female presence in the home. And so he very much emphatically agreed. That's exactly what he wanted to. He wanted to preside and to be a provider and a strong husband and father, and it just clicked for us. So we made decisions in our life that would make sure that we stuck to that. In the beginning, when I was first baptized, right before my baptism, I had a set of young missionaries and a set of elder missionaries. So a married couple and a young couple. Sorry, I'm still a convert, so I don't know the terms for that.
We got it. We got you. Yep.
And the married couple missionaries got the Family Proclamation out for me and started teaching me about it, and I was put off. That was one of the things that made me go, ooh, because I had been taught my whole life that basically the way I was raised is my family would rather me be gay than Republican.
Okay.
So.
Okay. Not alone in that. I've heard that. Yeah.
Yeah. So when I read through this, I was like, this isn't right. It didn't click. I was like, this can't be true. But I still knew in my heart, in my soul, that it was. It sounded right because it was things that I had always desired. I always wanted a strong mother. I always wanted a family. And I always had felt that I had been basically dropped on the doorstep and like I was adopted because I just didn't quite fit in, And so when I finally prayed about it and was listening to my elder missionary speak about this, he had such a way of speaking truthfully in a way that you believe him. You just know that he didn't back down, he didn't shy away, and I wasn't afraid to express my concern as he was telling me. But he had a way of just saying, this is true. This is the truth, whether you like it or not. And truth doesn't care about feelings, And I could just sense it. He was right. And my conversion happened so fast. It just kind of rolled. But when we had first gotten married, we had a lot of trials immediately. We had almost experienced homelessness a couple of times. I have Crohn's disease, so I was hospitalized and had a lot of financial trials. Well, when we finally did have children, we had them back to back. They're only 10 months apart, as I stated earlier. And after our second child came home, she was in the NICU for a month, and I felt like I'm going to have to get a job. We were behind on rent. We were behind on bills. We were getting Bishop Storehouse orders for food. And I decided I'm going to just go get a job. I know I really want to be a stay-at-home mother, but it's just too hard. It's not going to work. And I went and I applied, went to an interview, got the job. And then I immediately came home and told my husband I needed to go to the temple. And I went and prayed, and I felt the Lord tell me not to take the job. And I was scared because I was like, we need this money. But I just knew that this is not the way that our home is supposed to be run. Our children deserve to have a mother who's all in, as they run around in the background.
Yes.
Deserve to have a mother who is all in and have my focus on them. And so I came home and I told my husband that we had made this decision to follow the Family Proclamation and we got to stick to it. And I felt the Lord tell me not to take this job. And so he said, okay, that he would do everything he had to do to make sure that we stick to this as much as possible. And it did not come without its trials, but we have been seriously blessed because of it. And I know that we will continue to be blessed for following its principles as best as possible. And so more than anything, I just have an emotional and spiritual testimony that it is true.
That's an amazing story. So you've lived it. You've sacrificed to follow it, and you've seen the blessings as you've done that.
Yes.
Question: how long after you were introduced to the Family Proclamation and you were turned off by it till when you had felt and accepted that no, this is God's truth?
That's a really good question. So my conversion and baptism happened so fast. I met them at the end of August and I got baptized at the beginning of October. So it would have been probably within the span of a couple of days.
Okay, that's pretty fast. So you were not happy about it, right? You didn't like it. And then what did the wrestling look like? Did you actually ask the Lord in prayer, or was it more of just no, this makes sense. This calls back to, my childhood and what I wanted growing up. How did you overcome that disagreement or that wrestle with the proclamation?
I
in
think
those 2 days?
like a lot of my spiritual experiences, it's just knowledge that is just given to me in my mind
Hmm.
or in my heart, and I could just
Hmm.
tell and feel. And I don't have to do a lot of search or weighing when I just know things are true. And then I just test it. So
Okay.
even when it came to joining the church, there were moments where I just was not sure. But I remember feeling like, well, if this isn't true, I can always go back.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna try.
Yeah.
I'm gonna take a step forward and I'm gonna pray and I'm gonna test it.
Mhm.
And I think that's just how I go through a lot of my spiritual experiences is I just take a step. I trust in the Lord enough and I take a step.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay. Um, well, my why I choose to sustain the Family Proclamation, just like you, Megan, I remember when it came out. It was 1995. I was 12 years old, and they read it over the pulpit, and then they gave each family a copy to take home and discuss. And my family, we were not regular scripture readers or family home evening people, but to my dad's credit, he took it and he came home and we sat around and we read it together. And I was really excited because I thought, we're going to Missouri or it's going to be great, something like really big and exciting. And just like you, it was just duh, like just total duh, underwhelming. This is basic knowledge in 1995 that everybody knows. Fast forward a couple years, I got my first job working with kids at the age of 18. And it took maybe a couple months for me to see what I had been learning about my whole life in the church, um, which was that the family should be the most important thing in our lives, that we should defend the family and prioritize our family. And what I saw working with kids is that was not happening. And you could see the results of that in these children's lives. So it took me a couple months to realize the Family Proclamation maybe has some relevance, despite what I thought. And it also, that the prophets who've been preaching about family all these years actually meant something, that it matters. And I worked with kids in a professional setting for the next 15 years. Um, and I've worked in personal settings with kids and teenagers and adults for the last 25. And that has been true all these years. So my conversion to the proclamation is more of seeing the fruits of it being followed or not being followed in the lives of children that I've worked with. And it's heartbreaking because you see these kids who aren't getting the upbringing that they deserve, that they're entitled to, and you see how that affects them. So as time went on, I started to research this and research, well, does a child's upbringing have as much of an impact on their life and how they'll grow up to be an adult as I imagine it is, with based on my personal experience? So I researched the studies and started looking into the data, and sure enough, it supported what I saw firsthand working with kids. And then I started to follow politics real closely. And I started to realize that it was only one side of the aisle, one side that ever brought up the breakdown of the family and what that has done to society and culture. And so I started to follow that more and search the histories and research policies. And I found that there were specific policies that have contributed to the breakdown of the nuclear family. Um, and then I started to dig some more, and I found that there were ideologies specifically targeting the breakdown of the nuclear family and specifically encouraging that deterioration. And as I've studied this and experienced it firsthand and seen the effects, because we have today in America, we have 1 in 4 kids that are growing up in a home without a dad. 1 in 4 kids. That wasn't the case when Megan and I were young. That wasn't the case 60 years ago, 100 years ago. And there are reasons and things that have gotten us to this point. So when I say I sustain the Family Proclamation, I'm saying I sustain it. It's not blind obedience. It's not, I'm not brainwashed by misogyny. I have seen it for 25 years in real life and the effects of family on children. And not only that, but the effects of families on culture and society. I've studied the histories, I've studied the policies, I've studied the scriptures, and it all has an impact, and it all supports that inspired document, that it is in fact inspired. Um, and that is what has propelled me to get to this point. And it's one of my biggest goals is to share that that document is true. And again, not just because my leaders told me, not just because I'm supposed to say that, but because I have for 25 years seen its deterioration, or the deterioration of the family and society, and seen the effects of that, and want to shout it to the world why it's important and that it is important. So that is what got me to this point. And I love how, Megan, your testimony is just, you grew up with it, right? Your family practiced it, you saw it, and you practice it as a mother, and it hasn't steered you wrong. Is that correct? Yep.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Michaela, you didn't receive that as a child, which, let me caveat what I said. When I said that a child's home life and their family life is the number one determining factor of how they'll grow into as an adult, there are exceptions to that. Okay. I've seen that as well. So a child can have not an ideal upbringing, and they can grow up and change that, and change that for their own family. As well as the flip side, you have kids who grow up with devoted parents who do everything that they can for them, and they have their agency, and they still choose to use that agency unwisely. So there are exceptions, but for the most part, in my experience, and I've worked with the groups in the socioeconomic groups across the entire spectrum. I've worked with all races, I've worked with all ethnicities. It is the same thing that is true, that is a child's home life, for the most part, will determine how they turn out as adults. So Michaela, you didn't have an ideal upbringing,
Right.
but you are changing that.
I'm doing my best, and still, what you said is absolutely true. I still have my challenges that I have spent, and will continue to spend a lot of time overcoming. And with the Lord's help, and with prayer and dedication, He has truly healed me and helped me to overcome those things. But it'll still be a lifelong challenge.
Mm-hmm. But exactly, but with the atonement, anything's possible.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Okay, next question, and you guys kind of touched on this, but I want to dig more into it. How can we sustain, practice, and teach the doctrines of the Family Proclamation within our own homes, particularly as wives and mothers? So, Megan.
Okay, this one's kind of funny because takes me back to a time when I was first married, and my husband and I were sitting in our little basement apartment, and it was probably the first meal we had had there. And we sit down, and he looks across the table and he says, "Megan, will you say the blessing, please?" And I just remember feeling so offended and horrified that, oh, we're married now, so you think you can just boss me around and tell me what to do?
Mhm.
And it was, I don't know, it was this moment that just, it was really hard for me to think, like, we were dating. When we were dating, you never asked me to say the prayer, but now that we're married, you just get to be the boss of me. And it's so funny to look back at that moment and think, in my house growing up, my dad always called on us to pray when he was home. Why would I want that to be different in my own home? But for whatever reason, it felt funny coming from my husband and not coming from my dad. And I think um, a big part of that is that in Western culture, we are swimming in feminism and all kinds of things. I'll say modern feminism because if you say feminism, people always come at you and say, well, what about the right to vote? And what about whatever? I'm talking about the feminism that is detrimental to a cohesive family unit. And I just think we are so steeped in all of that that you just absorb some of it, even if you don't mean to, even if you've been taught the Family Proclamation, you just kind of absorb it. And that it was funny for me that I had to make a deliberate effort to sort of deprogram from all of those things. And over the years, as I embraced my role as wife and mother and my role as a daughter of God, and I stopped trying to kind of fight for I don't know, importance or whatever. I don't consciously, I don't think I was trying to do that, but subconsciously I was. But the more I understood my role as a daughter of God and my role as a wife and my role as a mother, I just felt so much happier, just more calm. It made sense. A family works together a lot better if you're not jockeying for position and trying to decide who's more important or who has the better role, because none of that's even true. We work together, and God planned it that way. And I feel like the sooner we can realize that as wives and mothers, that it's not a competition, that we have a single goal, and that is to bring our family back to Heavenly Father and Jesus Christ. And it takes two. It takes a mother and a father. And one of the ways we talked about this with our kids growing up, it's like a basketball team. If everybody plays the same position on the team, they're not that great, right?
Mhm.
But
Yeah. Get nothing done.
everybody has a different position, but they all work together for the benefit of the whole. And it doesn't mean that they're more important or less important. Sorry, my husband's home using the toaster oven.
Oh, I couldn't even hear you. Sorry, I have a
I'm so
fly buzzing
sorry.
around my face. I hope you guys can't see or hear that. It's like
I
lands on
just
my mic.
Anyway, I just learned over the years, and it has taken time for me to learn and understand truly the importance of being a daughter of God and what comes with that, and that massive responsibility that it is not less than. And just the sooner you can understand your role and who you are and who you were meant to be, the more at peace you'll be, and you'll stop trying to fight for these artificial, I don't know, you'll stop having artificial power struggles over things that just don't matter, if that makes sense.
Yes. No, I like that. Artificial power struggles. Because you're right. We are steeped in this feminist culture, which in my research is one of those policies and ideologies that found were directly contributing to the breakdown of the nuclear family. But it's become part of our culture. So whether you realize it or not, we have all been raised in a culture where it's there is a competition, right, between men and women, and there's this not this everyone has their specific roles and we're all okay with that and see the value in that. It's that we all need to fight for superficial, to be in charge, to be the head or whatever it is. And I love that you struggled with that because again, that was a culture that you grew up in. We all did here in America in this time, but you peacefully were able to find and practice and realize that the fruits of that were peace, right? And calm and joy and seeing your family work more effectively. And I love it. It's a great testimony to that. Did you, about how long did that take you after that? Would you just guessing after that prayer where you realize, I don't want a man to tell me what to do, right? Because we're all raised not to have men tell us what to do. Did you realize it's okay?
Um, I think the whole process was probably longer than I'd like to admit, honestly. I mean, there were a lot of years when my kids were young that it's hard, as Michaela knows, it's hard when you're right in the throes of young motherhood, and it's so demanding. It's a master class on um, selflessness.
Mhm.
And when you're thrown right into it and it changes everything, I used to be jealous that my husband had a lunch break. I'd be like, you get a lunch break?
Sick
I don't get a
days.
lunch break. I
Yeah.
never get a break. And now that all my kids are, now that I'm sitting on the couch when he goes off to work every morning, I'm like, oh, well, I guess things do work out okay. But I think it was a lot of years. I can't tell you exactly how many. And I just think it was a lot of years of me understanding the role of wife and mother. And I used to say to my mom, my own mom, I would talk to her all the time and I would say, I feel like I'm supposed to be doing something with my life. What am I supposed to be doing with my life? And every time she would say, you're doing it. I'm like, I know, but there's something really important I'm supposed to be
What's
doing.
my mom gig? What's my mom job? Yeah.
And she's like, you are doing it. You're raising your kids. And that's exactly what you're supposed to be doing. And so I'm so grateful for a mother who kind of helped me see the things that I couldn't see in my tunnel vision. She really helped me widen my vision and understand. And now that my kids are older and that it went by a lot faster than it seemed like it was in the moment, I understand the wisdom of her words so much more.
Okay, Michaela, what do you think we can do to sustain, practice, and teach the doctrines of the Family Proclamation within our own homes as wives and mothers?
That's something that I feel like I'm more passionate about. Um, I, I don't want to throw my family under the bus, but I grew up in a home where feminism was definitely a thing. My dad would often let my stepmom do as she pleases, say as she pleases, and win all discussions and conversations just for peace, you know. She was the type to kind of throw tantrums if she didn't get what she wanted, and it made everybody miserable. It really did. And so I always, I guess, after I joined the church, I really wanted to make sure I had a home that it felt peaceful and that my children saw that their father and I were one, that we were in union. And so I find little ways to try to make sure that my children know that they have a firm foundation to be on, that their parents love each other and they are united. Um, I make sure that they understand, and they're only toddlers, but I make sure that they understand that their dad works hard so that they can have a home to live in, or that we have food on the table because daddy works hard. If they get a new toy, I'll be like, oh, make sure you tell daddy thank you for getting you that toy, and so that they know, even though I'm the one that went out and bought it, their dad's the one that works hard. That's why he's not home, you know. If my husband and I have a disagreement, we will discuss in front of the children in a diplomatic way, and but we never, well, we don't fight anyways, but we don't fight in front of our kids. We make sure that they see us having proper discussions because we emulate the way that they should be communicating with others too. You know, we try to set that precedent, and I also, and in times where I have felt really unsure and just nervous about certain changes in our life or decisions we had to make, there have been a couple of times where I have had to just trust my husband and let him be the presider. And I know there are a lot of people that get really upset about that, but it's true. I did. And we were blessed for it. I was blessed for trusting in him. And it helps having a husband who is spiritually sound and who is a good man that I can trust. So he works hard to be that man that I can trust, and I work hard to be a woman who is willing to trust her husband. And I can see that in our home. We have been blessed for that. And I think our children will be blessed for that as well. So that's something that we are somewhat passionate about. And I I believe that that is in part what the Family Proclamation does discuss too, is allowing the husband to preside over the home and make those decisions. And I think that helps the family function and helps us all feel safe and protected and keep those roles defined.
Absolutely. So what I'm hearing is for Megan, for you, allowing those roles to take shape, it took some time for you to be totally okay with that. And that's okay. If there's women listening right now who feel the same way that you did, that it takes time and trial and error. And then Michaela, with you, you guys communicated about that from the onset before you were even married and worked together, have been working together your entire relationship to make that a priority and happen in your family.
Yes.
Yeah, and your kids will be blessed 1,000% for your guys' efforts. For me, my thing is I think we as women, as wives and mothers, need to prioritize our homes and our homes. That's husbands and kids. And again, we are in a world where it's all the accolades come from what you do outside the home, and that's fine. And one of the other things that have helped me gain a testimony of the Family Proclamation have been spiritual confirmations that I've received about it, and including some pretty big personal revelations, one of which was about being a working mom. And I won't get into the details of that here, but it was a very massive, just shifted my thoughts and my opinions on the matter. And the one of the big takeaways from that revelation was it's when women are distracted and that distraction takes us away from our kids, which, as the proclamation states, that should be that's our number one priority. That's our role, right? Men are to preside, provide, and protect, and women are teaching and nurturing and rearing children. So when we have something, whether it's a job or a hobby or anything that takes away from us paying attention and understanding what we need to do to help those kids, that's when it becomes a problem. So if we as women can get back to that and prioritize our kids, because we only have them for a little time, as Megan can attest, right? And that what we do during those years matters, and that's what they deserve. I mean, God has sent these spirits to us, and He's entrusted these spirits to women. And again, I didn't think this way when I was younger. So if people are listening right now and you don't think this way, it's okay, because this is opposite of the culture that we've been raised in. But those kids need their mothers from the time they are conceived in our bellies to when they go off into the real world and even afterwards. But if we prioritize our children, not to the point where we neglect other areas in our life, but just that realizing that that is our job. My job are those kids, and I need to be committed to that, all in. And something that also has helped with that is having the companionship of the Spirit. Megan, I'm sure you can attest to that, having raised your kids. But I just had an experience recently where I credit the Holy Ghost. It was prompting to do something more consistent with my daughter that I kind of had let slack, and I thought, okay, fine, I'll do that. And when I started to implement that, it took 2 days for her to share something that I had no idea about that was hurting her in her life. And I'm grateful that I've picked up on the prompting, and now I can help her move through this problem in her life. But I feel so bad and stupid because basically my kind of laziness led to me not being as involved and aware of what was going on in her life. So having having the Spirit and praying for the Spirit to tell us what we need to do to help those kids, that's a way that we can practice and sustain the family proclamation in our homes. Next question. This one may be a little harder. I don't know. How can we sustain, practice, and teach the doctrines of the Family Proclamation within our communities and society at large? So our wards, our neighborhoods, social media, at the voting booth. How can we do that? Megan.
Okay. One thing that you were saying about the Spirit kind of teaching you different things about motherhood and prompting you. One of the things that I have felt recently, and this kind of plays into the community and everything as well, is that as a stay-at-home mom, even when your kids start to leave the house, there is still a lot to be done. And there is so much value in a woman who is available to serve. And I'm lucky enough to live near my whole family. We're all in the same ward. I never thought I would experience that, but we're all in the ward that I grew up in. We all just kind of went away and came back. And I have been available to take my mother to doctor's appointments and to be there for her. I have been able to help friends and neighbors. The Spirit has helped me be in places when people are suffering and hurting. And just because I am available, I'm available to serve. And I think as our kids grow up, if we don't go back into the workforce or whatever, I think that women need to understand that there is still value to the community and to your family to be able to serve, because I think that's a little bit of humanity that our communities need. Women who are willing to help each other out, to be there for one another. And the Relief Society is so great for that. I mean, we get to serve so much, but there is something really nice about being able to just drop whatever and to go help someone if they need it and to be available to do that. But I think in our wards specifically, we cannot shy away from the Family Proclamation. I know that that's something that has become tricky. I don't think it should be tricky, but it has, because the way our culture is now. I just think the things all of the same things that used to threaten the family still threaten the family, but now I feel like we've just added a few extra, and most of those fall underneath the rainbow banner. And I think there's a different mindset when it comes to those specific challenges for some people. It's like before we knew that the Savior was there to help us with all of the imperfections we have in our families, because nobody has a perfect family. We all have trials and struggles and imperfections and things that we deal with. But as we looked at the Family Proclamation and saw where maybe our family didn't fit it exactly, we would look to the Savior to kind of bridge the gap, to help us, to ease our burdens. We would look to him. But somehow under these other challenges, same gender attraction and transgenderism, things like that, for some reason, people look at that and they say, well, that's just too much. You know, the atonement of Jesus Christ can cover everything else, whether it's divorce or abuse or death or whatever. The Lord can help me with those, but this is just too much. It's too big. And I don't know why we have that mindset, or that so many people do. And I think if we teach the proclamation, if we don't shy away from it at church and we talk about it in our lessons, I hope that we can bring that feeling back to people who maybe have missed it, that the atonement of Jesus Christ is infinite and all-encompassing, and there is not a single trial relating to our families that he cannot help us with, and that he won't help us with if we are willing to strive for what's outlined in the Family Proclamation. If we're willing to strive for that, he will help us. And so in our wards, I think we can do that. In the voting booth, for me personally, I feel like there's things that are very obvious that are anti-family. And to me, that is a hard line. I just had someone come to my door the other day campaigning for a different mayoral or gubernatorial candidate than the one I'm voting for. And he said, can you give me just one reason why you won't vote for her? And I said, it's the gender issue. I can't, that's a hard line for me. I cannot vote for that. And so I think if we make our voices heard at the voting booth, my daughter is right now concerned that she's going to have a boy in her changing room for show choir this year, which is an experience that we have not had. And so I'm just kind of thinking about that in the back of my mind, like, you know, is there going to come a time where I have to say something or be a voice? One thing I've noticed is that if you are willing to be a voice, other people will join you. Not everybody's brave enough to be the first one.
Yep, be a leader. Yep.
But if you are, you will find people who will join you. I know my brother and sister-in-law had some issues at their kids' school. Their kids were at a private school and they had a lot of issues, and they kind of stood up and a lot of parents joined them, and they eventually ended up leaving the school because the school was inflexible. But there were so many parents who came to them and thanked them for, you know, being a voice and for having the courage to stand up. And you just don't know. And that's one thing I found on social media. You don't know how many people feel the same way you do, or are having the same stresses or worries about the situation, the state of our world and society, until you put yourself out there and you find that there are a lot of people who are really committed to the gospel of Jesus Christ and the doctrine found in the Family Proclamation. So put yourself out there and be amazed, because there's a lot of really great people out there.
I love it. Be a leader. Yeah, because our side is typically more reserved and quiet, I found. And it just takes someone who is brave and speaks out, and that will encourage other people. And I love that your brother and sister-in-law, you said, were kind of in a battle at the school. And I'm sad that they had to be in that situation, but at least they were standing up, because I know people who are uncomfortable with things at the school, but they're too scared, or they don't realize that there's other people who feel the same way. So I think you hit the nail on the head, where you just need to be bold and brave and speak out, and you will find that there are people who think like you. And I also like that you brought up the proclamation, you know, about the church's focus on the family isn't just because we are against the rainbow group, right? I mean, it starts with, you know, sex and marriage and all of those things. And as someone who didn't grow up in an ideal LDS home either, right? We said, we used to joke that we put the fun in dysfunctional, because we had, you know, just my parents were converts, and our home didn't look like what you maybe thought your typical LDS home looked like, but it was still grounded in those basic principles. And we all were still blessed for that because, as you pointed out, Christ's atonement fills in the gaps. So, Michaela, what are your thoughts?
I don't know if I can add anything to what she said. It was all just straight on and perfect. Yeah, standing up when we have the opportunity, trying to be brave to say what we know is true. And I think she's totally right. I think more people than we realize tend to agree about these gender issues and are just scared to speak up.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I don't know if I can add anything to what she said.
And you're doing it with your account, right? Your account, I don't know if you just started that as a personal account, but the posts that you share a lot of times are very pro family, right? And pro God. And have you got pushback from people on that, or what's the response
Oh,
that you've heard on those accounts on both sides, pushback and support?
I tend to just ignore them.
Yeah.
I'm very good at pushing back. I guess my philosophy is speak truth. And there are times where we should fight back, and there are times where we should just be quiet and continue to say what we know is true and what is good. I try to often try to think about how I would imagine maybe a general authority responding to such comments, and what I feel is that they would often just, unless in one-on-one conversation,
Mm-hmm.
be silent, let them talk, and then continue to speak truth. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, but yeah, no, I get all sorts of comments that I'm brainwashed, of course, that I'm in a cult, and I think a lot of people assume that I'm a lifelong member and that I was just taught these things growing up, and that's why I believe them. So, I try to speak often about my experiences, and because I believe that is a testament of what Jesus Christ can do and what how we can change and how we can learn. Because I live a life that is almost entirely opposite of how I was raised.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm probably rambling now, but
No,
I hope that
no,
answers your question. Okay.
no. That's what I want to hear. Um, do you have any advice for anyone who wants to be more bold and speak out, whether it's in person or online, but they are just scared? They see the hate that's out there. They don't want to put themselves out. They don't want to put themselves out there. Michaela, do you have any tips for them?
I think the best advice I can give on that is just to be prayerful and also be patient with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
It comes in time. And I think that everyone has natural talents. Some of us are naturally talented when it comes to speaking up. And some of us are more naturally talented when it comes to having patience and having charity and being graceful for others and quiet. But that doesn't mean that they're not still fighting. A lot of the greatest fights are in our homes and in our communities and not necessarily online. But yeah, if you feel that prompting to stand up and speak, try to be brave and be prayerful, and the Lord will strengthen you.
Thank you. And one thing, I agree with everything that you girls have said. And one thing to add, one thing that's helped me to get over that fear is just immersing myself in the gospel, particularly the scriptures. I feel like if I stopped studying the scriptures for like 2 weeks to a month, I would stop doing this. I'd be like, why am I wasting my time? There's so many other things I can do. But when I try
Mm-hmm.
to have that constant companionship of the Spirit and I just study the scriptures that show us what a life looks like without God and with God, and what a society looks like with God or without God, it just fuels me. It just emboldens me to the point where I don't care if people don't like me. I don't care if they're going to be mean. You just accept that as being a peculiar people that we are as Latter-day Saints, that's just comes with the territory. But with God on our side, that's all we need. And if I could just encourage anyone out there, male or female, but specifically women, because men are the head of the household, but we're the heart of the household. We're the heart of the communities. And the reason I named my blog Go and Do and named the podcast Go and Do is I just want people to do what you ladies are doing. And you're putting yourself out there and you are speaking up for the restored gospel, for God's truths, and in a way that you can. So, like you, Michaela, you're in the throes of young motherhood. Your husband's gone a lot for his military responsibilities, but you have these accounts and you're starting to make more videos, right? You're starting to speak out more. When I was in that situation, my husband was gone for the military. My kids were really young. That's when I started my blog. They were in bed by 7 o'clock. So I would just sit on my computer. My husband was away and I would just sit all for like 4 hours at night, just researching and writing. And that's all I could do at that point. I couldn't go and do anything else, but just prayerfully finding what you can do right now to impact your community and society at large. And then to pray and for bravery and just to be brave and do it, because it can be scary, but you learn, as I'm sure Michaela and Megan have learned, and myself, how to deal with haters, right? And how to stand your truth firmly and respectfully. And then sometimes we're just going to end the conversation right there, right? So thank you, ladies, again for coming here. I just want to end with a quick closing statement. If you could say anything to the world about the proclamation in just this one statement, what would you say to them? Megan.
I would say no amount of money or programs is going to heal what can only be fixed by turning to God and starting with our families. You got to start in the middle and work out. It's never going to work if we try to do these big programs and have them all filter down into the home. It can't. It's not supposed to be that way. Start in the home and turn to God.
Yes. Perfect. Michaela.
I would say it is 100% prophetic. It is definitely divinely inspired from God, and prophets see around corners. That all of our problems and issues can definitely be fixed with having stable homes, I think, anyways. And prayerfully focusing on it and teaching it to your children, I think will certainly bless us in our future.
I 1,000% agree with both of you. That ties into mine. So back to when I started working with kids, I thought, if I ever get a master's, I am going to make it my thesis how a child's home life and family life is the number one determining factor that impacts their life and how they will turn out as adults. And I never got my master's, but I have researched that, and I'm telling you, 25 years of experience with kids and studying this, it is divinely inspired. And it was very timely as well, because when it came out in 1995, nothing was ground shaking or groundbreaking, nothing was new or controversial. But I've seen in those 30 years, every single paragraph is a new topic in the proclamation, and every single one of those topics have been attacked in the 30 years since it came out, which tells us, like Michaela said, that this was inspired. That prophets, they saw what was coming, they saw what was happening, and they saw what was coming, and they stood firm in God's truths. And I absolutely testify that they are God's truths, and I've seen it and believe it. Ladies, thank you so much for being here and taking time out of your day.
Thanks for having us.